Story 1. Am I the a-hole for getting mad at my wife for her jokes about me not helping around the house with our baby? My wife and I both work. Only difference is she actually goes into the office and I'm still working from home. We have a 10-month-old daughter and I've been basically a stay-at-home dad on top of working my regular day job. It was stressful as hell when my wife finished her maternity leave, but luckily my work is pretty flexible, so I'm not usually super busy. Most of the day, I'm replying to emails on my phone with my daughter and her carrier or taking conference calls while she's napping. I also do the cleaning around the house because I'm a total neat freak, and order or cook dinner too if I have the time. Then in the evenings, my wife takes over, so I have some leisure time. On Sunday, we went to have lunch at her sister's house. First time we've all seen each other in a while. They ask us how life's going with a new baby, and my wife starts joking about the house being a mess when she gets home and her having to clean it up because I've been too busy playing with our daughter all day to do it myself. When her sister's husband asks how I manage, I admit it does get overwhelming sometimes, and my wife once again chimed in saying, I call her constantly throughout the day over little things, like not being able to find our daughter's binky or needing her help because my daughter won't stop crying and I have no idea what to do. She also laughed about how every day when she gets home, she just prays I didn't burn the house down. I know it was all said in a lighthearted joking around way, but it really hurt my feelings. Everyone was chuckling except me, so my wife kissed my cheek, telling me not to take it too seriously, and she appreciates that I put in the effort. So I straight up told her, well, I don't appreciate you acting like I'm useless when I'm the one at home taking care of her all day and cleaning the house. My wife didn't know how to respond to that, and we changed the subject. She was in a serious mood after we left because I embarrassed her, and it wouldn't have hurt for me to let her joke around a little because she knows I help out a lot. I've been distant with her, not talking much when she gets home, and she's mad at me for taking it too seriously. Even her sister says I'm overreacting, but I just don't see why she thought it was okay to paint me as the cliché useless man-child husband. Now I have my wife saying I'm being a bit of a butt for still holding this against her, and she doesn't see why it's a big deal to me. Part of me just feels hurt, and I'd like an apology, but another part wonders if I'm being a butt for how I'm acting with her. Okay. I know some folks like teasing, joking, and stuff. There's kind of a line with it. It's like, sometimes it's okay, but like, this person's clearly working very hard. They're stressed out, but they're doing a lot. And she did all this kind of joking, just making fun of him for like, oh, useless husband, oh my gosh. And then like, when he wasn't like loving it, she was just like, oh, I know, you try or whatever. Like, it just doesn't feel great. Like, I don't know. Jokes, if you're going to make jokes at someone's expense, you should make sure that they're kind of okay with it, or you should know what the limit is. Maybe his reaction to it immediately was a little bit much. Like, I might have waited until afterward to be like, hey, I really actually didn't appreciate the way you joke about that. I work really hard, and it really kind of diminished how I feel in front of your family. Like, it would have been nice for you to go, oh my gosh, he's doing so much. I'm so appreciative, what a team we make. So yeah, I think I'm mostly on his side. I think his reaction might have been a little bit harsh in the moment, but I also kind of understand it. That's kind of a crappy thing to do. Story 2. Refuse to give a painkiller to someone crying in pain? Congrats on failing your final. 2 years ago, I used to share an apartment with my sister and 2 other roommates, and the flat next to us lived 3 girls whom we've known for years, as we all used to live in the same dorm years ago, plus their 2 new roommates who we didn't know well. The other girls were messy and kind of immature because they were younger than us, but we all mostly got along since we go way back. This one time, my sister and one of our roommates got into a huge argument with the girls from the other flat because of them taking utensils and clothes from our place without permission and losing them. I didn't participate in the argument, but there was obvious tension between the 2 flat residents. Anyway, a few days after that, after a long day of being cooped up in the library preparing for a difficult final, I got home late at night, and there was only one of my roommates home that night. Pretty much, as soon as I got home, my face started swelling up and my tooth started aching like crazy. I was in so much pain I started crying, and there were no painkillers, and I had no way to get into the pharmacy that late at night. My roommate, who also had nothing to do with the argument earlier, knocked on the door of our next-door neighbors, and one of the newer roommates, who we barely knew, answered the door. My roommate then explained the situation to her and that I'm in excruciating pain and asked if she could borrow some painkiller. The girl looks my roommate up and down and tells her, oh, I have painkillers, but I'm not going to give them to her, because I'm the sister of the girl who got into a silly argument with her roommates. Obviously, I'm stunned someone can be this petty, but I let it go and I survived the night. Now, here for the pettiness on my behalf. A few days after, I happen to be home late at night and I hear the doorbell ring. I open the door and lo and behold, it's the same girl who refused to spare me an ibuprofen a few days ago, except of being snarky, she looked super distraught and defeated. She looked both surprised and relieved I was the one who answered the door that night. She opened her mouth. I'm sorry, I don't know how to say this. My charger died on me and I have a final tomorrow morning and a submission now, and I just started preparing. I know you have one like mine and I was wondering if I could borrow yours? Obviously, she was down on her luck that day because I wasn't my usual generous self. I looked her up and down and said, "No, sorry, I'm using it right now," and shut the door in her face. This might be the pettiest thing I've ever done in my life, but I don't exactly hate myself for it. Oh, neighbors, I keep telling you every single day to just let the little things go and don't start feuds. Don't start getting all snippy and trying to get revenge for nonsense that's just so minor. But no, you keep doing it. You keep going at each other and you start these feuds. And once you do something, the other person does something and it just escalates. Granted, is a toothache more important than a final? No, a final's probably way bigger deal. But, so it's like, is this equal? Not necessarily, but is it still kind of deserved? Yeah. Why, if you're going to be crappy to someone and then go to them and be like, help, they're probably not going to want to help. You kind of did it to yourself. Just be nice. Story 3. Neighbor's dog kills coworker's cat. Coworker ruins their Christmas. Hey folks, I know it's probably pretty obvious, but content warning. There will be some talk of animal death in this story, so if you don't want to hear anything like that, like I kind of don't, then scroll to the time code the editor has on screen right now to skip this story. Quick note, I was part of this story, but not the dealer nor receiver of the revenge. Years ago, I used to work with a receptionist in a vet clinic named Margaret. Margaret was and still is a very sweet 65-year-old woman who had been at this practice since it was opened some 40 years ago. She always had a smile, a joke, compliments, and baked goods for your birthday. She never had an unkind word to say about anyone. She was seriously one of the coolest people I'd ever worked with, and she basically knew everyone, from our regular clients to our mailman's granddaughter. The only bad thing about Margaret, and this was not her fault, was that she and her family lived next to one of the trashiest, nastiest families I'd ever met that had 2 even nastier pit bulls. I'm talking nastier than crap that had been hoarded by dung beetles for years nasty. And these dogs were constantly escaping and terrorizing the neighborhood, even trying to get into her house. Margaret had asked them more than once to please keep the dogs contained, especially since she had an elderly fat cat named Smokestack, and these pits had attacked smaller animals before. The family basically told her to rot in hell, that they knew what they were doing. How dare she accuse the breed, yada yada, basically blowing her off. Margaret knew there had been reports filed against her neighbors, but nothing had been done about it really. So she made sure to keep Smokestack in the house to keep him safe and was very careful not to let him out. If you've been paying attention up until this point, you'll notice I'm using the word was and had regarding old Smokestack, and it was as awful as you think. 3 weeks before Christmas, Margaret had the day off and was in the garage with Smokestack fiddling with some Christmas decorations. Unbeknownst to her, the pits next door got out and broke through the bottom of her garage door. They went right for Smokestack before she could blink and started to tear the cat apart. Margaret screamed for help, and it was only when her son and husband came out with a baseball bat that they were able to free Smokestack from the jaws of these dogs. I was working that day and will never forget when she came in crying harder than I had ever seen anyone cry in my life, clutching a poor dying Smokestack in her arm. Her husband had to hold her while we tried to bring Smokestack back, but we couldn't do it. It would have taken a miracle of God and then some, and he passed away. A truly crap way to go in what should have been the golden years of his fat cat life. Margaret sat there for a while with his mangled body, quietly crying for a while, before she finally kissed whatever part of him was still intact and stood up. She told us all, "I've got a job to do, take care of him, girls," and then left. We figured Margaret would take a few days off to be with family and then continue on with life as normal. We figured wrong. Now, when I say Margaret knew everyone, I mean everyone. Right after she left the hospital, Margaret gathered herself up and went to the police with pictures of poor Smokestack and told her story. The same police officers she had watched grow up over the last 20 years from rowdy middle schoolers, she used to help babysit, to the officers they were today. They were absolutely shocked to hear what had happened to their surrogate grandma and pushed her case to the front of the line. The case found itself before a judge whose daughter had gone to school with Margaret's daughter. The judge granted an emergency dangerous animal extraction warrant to her neighbors. Of course, there was a hearing within 2 weeks, which I got to admit was ridiculously fast. The neighbors tried to argue that their dogs weren't aggressive. They even went so far as to accuse Margaret of having it out for their family and making it all up. But their argument trickled when the dozens of dangerous animal reports were presented, and finally completely dried out when Margaret presented the surveillance video her grandson had gotten showing the dogs coming into her property and attacking poor Smokestack. The emergency extraction and humane destruction of her neighbor's dogs was granted. It was Christmas Eve when Margaret heard a knock on her door. She opened it up to see the neighbors standing there sobbing uncontrollably. They were begging her to stop animal control, that they had these dogs since they were puppies, how the kids would be devastated and it would ruin Christmas, and if she could find it in her heart to give the dogs another chance. Up until this moment, the neighbors had behaved abominably. They didn't offer to fix the garage, they never apologized for trying to slander her name in court. Hell, they didn't even pay for Smokestack to be cremated. At no point had they even shown the slightest shred of remorse for what damage their dogs had done. And as the neighbors stood there blubbering and whimpering about how this was going to ruin their Christmas, Margaret looked them straight in the eye and told them in her calmest voice, "You took away my family, so now I'm taking away yours," and shut the door in their face just as animal control pulled up onto the driveway. Margaret was not surprised as she watched the dogs get hauled into the truck and taken away. After all, it was her idea for animal control to take the dogs on Christmas Eve, a perk from having known the AC officer supervisor for years. Margaret even made sure the dogs were euthanized before the outside Christmas lights turned on that night. The family never received the remains, nor did they ever get a chance to bring another animal into their family, as the father proceeded to drive drunk into a telephone pole that same night, killing him instantly. Mom went off the deep end, so CPS picked up the kids by February, and ultimately the house was foreclosed in September. Despite how traumatic Smokestack's death was, I'd like to think that if the neighbors had shown at least some regret, Margaret might not have gone as far as she did. She was/is still the person to forgive and forget. Or maybe she ultimately knew it had to be done, to push it to this point of no return before another family lost a member to these irresponsible neighbors. Either way, thank you, Margaret, for making the world a little bit safer for the pets in the world, and rest in peace, Smokestack. Hopefully, I'll see you on the other side with your favorite orange sock and a can of tuna. I don't like that the dogs were euthanized. It's not the dog's fault. They were raised as puppies by bad neighbors who did not train them well. Pit bulls are not a bad breed. I hate when people say that. I have a Shar-Pei Pit Bull mix. She is the sweetest, most loving animal I have ever known. She is a darling. And I wish the dogs could have just been taken away and rehomed somewhere and maybe retrained. I know sometimes once it gets to that point, it's hard. I don't know, but I hate that they're euthanized. And so I refuse to fully side with Margaret here. It's super wrong what happened, and the fact those neighbors did nothing and her cat died also breaks my heart, but I'm not going to celebrate 2 dogs getting killed just because it's in revenge for a cat getting killed and then a family falling apart. I mean, hopefully the kids are okay now, but this story just sucks. Story 4. Am I the a-hole for leaving my husband at home while I spend the week with my brothers because of how he buys groceries? I've been in a committed relationship with my husband for 17 years, and overall things have been great. We've had a few rough patches, but what's important to note is that while he earns more than me and is considered the main provider, I have a substantial trust fund that ensures we're financially stable. I work part-time as a teacher while attending university, earning less than him, and most of my income goes towards tuition. Our household income exceeds $200,000 annually, while the average in our area is well below $50,000. One ongoing issue we have is my husband's frugality. He likes to control my spending and have the final say on how he uses his earnings. It's worth mentioning that I've never used any of his income and have no intention to do so. However, the main point of contention between us is his frequent visits to food banks. Despite having more than enough food at home, he insists on going to food banks to save money. He intentionally looks disheveled and uses our beat-up car to blend in, even though he's never experienced food scarcity. I've explained to him that the need for food donations in our community, even showing him social media posts from local food banks, but he remains indifferent. I suggested he volunteer or donate to gain first-hand experience, but he refuses. The unfortunate part is that since we're never short on food, most of what he brings home ends up getting thrown away. Today, I discovered our fridge filled with fresh produce and meat that clearly didn't come from our regular grocery store. When I confronted him, he admitted to going to a food bank after seeing a Facebook post about a donation of fresh food. People on social media were already asking if any was left, and there wasn't. I showed him these comments, but he brushed them off, claiming people should have gone earlier. Exhausted by the situation, I packed a bag and went to stay with my brother for the weekend, asking for space to think things over. My husband accuses me of overacting, being vindictive, and threatens to go back to the food banks regardless of my feelings. His family is also messaging me, calling me an a-hole, and urging me to stop interfering with his choices. I turned off my phone, but now they're bombarding my brother with messages. Thankfully, he supports my decision and ignores them. All I want is to enjoy the rest of my week without being angry at my husband. Yes, I could let this go and not scold him, but the food he takes could have gone to people who truly need it. I'm not leaving my husband, but I need a few days away to gain some clarity. Am I wrong for wanting this space? Your husband is a piece of crap. I'm sorry, on multiple levels here. Okay, I'm not gonna get too angry. I'm gonna calm it down. We're gonna keep it lighthearted. Hoo-hoo-hoo! Your husband is taking food away from people who need it. Hoo-hoo! Tee-hee-hee! And your husband doesn't care about your feelings about it. Tee-hee-hee, ha-ha-ha! And says that he's not gonna stop because he doesn't care what you think. Hoo-hee-hee, ha-ha! What a fun guy! See, I'm being lighthearted. I'm not angry. I'm very happy about this whole situation. I hate him! You 200,000 a year! That is a very comfortable living. You don't need to go to a food bank. I mean, for the love of God, if he wants to save money, go shop at Aldi or something like that. You don't have to take food from a food bank and fresh produce and meat and stuff and then let it go to waste. That's this husband is like a Captain Planet villain in how evil he is being, just immoral, I just like to, and nothing you can say can stop me. I just want to slap him. Story 5. Never touch your truck again? You got it, neighbor. I, 59 male, live in a major city in Ontario, Canada. I live in a small subdivision and have 5 neighbors total on my street. For the past few years during the winter, when we're getting a lot of snow or a bad storm, as I'm leaving for my overnight shift at around 8 or 9 p.m., I'll put my wife's windshield wipers up on her car and do a quick walk around to my other 5 neighbors and put their windshield wipers up on their cars. Obviously not if they're outside or something, but if it looks like they're in for the night. Many of them forget to do this, as many of them have children, and it typically slips their mind, and their wipers will be frozen to their car in the morning. It's just something nice I like to do to look out for my neighbors. They're all always grateful for this and thank me for it. Many of them started doing it too, and there will be nights where I'll forget to put mine and my wife's up, and in the morning, one of the neighbors has done it for us. Anyway, recently one of our neighbors moved, and a new family moved in as of last week. It's a young couple and their 2 young children. The other night, I was leaving for my overnight shift at around 9 p.m. It was snowing really heavily, and we were supposed to be getting almost 30 centimeters of snow, and it was freezing out. So I put my wife's wipers up and do my usual quick walk around to the other neighbors. I was hesitant when I reached for my new neighbor's house, as I only introduced myself once, but I did it anyway. As I was putting the second wiper up on their pickup truck, the husband came charging out of his front door yelling, "What the F are you doing to my truck?" I tried to explain to him I was just putting his wipers up to help him. He continued to scream at me to get the hell off my property and don't touch my crap again. The wife then came out and started yelling at me too. I apologized and started walking away. Some of my other neighbors heard the commotion and came outside to see what was happening. They tried to explain to him that it's just something we do. Both of them weren't having it. Fast forward to this morning. I'm arriving home from my overnight shift, and as I'm walking in, I see the wife of this couple struggling outside to break the ice off the windshield wipers on the truck. Guess she was trying to take her kids to school, and the wipers were frozen solid on the car. She sees me and yells over, "Hey there, do you mind giving me a hand, please?" I look over at her and yell back, "No, sorry, thought I was never to touch your crap again, ma'am," and walked back inside. She yelled back at me, "Wow, a-hole." Told my wife about this. She thinks I should have helped her because she was just trying to get her kids to school. I disagree, as I was just following what they told me. Yeah, no, I wouldn't want to interact with these neighbors. The fact that you were doing this thing, they came out like, not even going like, hey, something wrong? Can I help you? Like, that would be my response if I saw something like, hey, what's up? Is something going on? But no, they came out yelling and screaming like, what are you doing? And then you were like, I just trying to explain, and they're still yelling at you and telling you to F off and stuff. It's like, I'd be with you where it's like, yeah, no, I don't want to make a connection. I don't want anything to do with you. I'm not going to touch your stuff. And if she suddenly the next day is like, oh, can you help me? It's like, no, I wouldn't even have just used the, do you mind giving me a hand, please? I'd be like, I'm sorry, after last night, I'm going to have to say no. Like, let him marinate in that for a little bit. Jeezy Pete. Boy, oh boy. As someone who comes from northern Minnesota or Canada Light, I've got to say, I expect a little more politeness from new Canadian neighbors. Come on now, geez. Story 6. My girlfriend left me on the day I was proposing without any explanation. Elise and I had been together for 3 years and living together for 1.5 years. Our relationship was very strong and we were madly in love. All of our friends always used to say that we were a perfect couple. Our communication was strong and we had everything planned in our lives. I told her that I won't be marrying her before I get a job that pays well enough to build our family, and she agreed. Well, I got a very good job 2 months ago and we started planning our lives together. Our plan was to get married in the next year or two, buy a house, and then have kids when we have more financial stability. She also started dropping hints that I should propose. I was already planning to propose, so I started researching for rings, proposal venues, etc. This is when I contacted Leah and asked her to meet me and keep it a secret. I told her my plans, and she confirmed that Elise would love this and also gave me some suggestions which I loved. Leah also included David, as the three of them were best friends since childhood and knew each other very well. They also helped me pick the ring. The plan was to rent a cabin surrounded by nature and wilderness, as Elise liked that a lot. I rented the cabin, and on Friday I took the day off without telling my girlfriend and met up with Leah and David and one of my friends to set up everything. I gave instructions to my friend about how I wanted everything to be set up, as he was supposed to go there the next day before us and set up everything, flowers, cameras, etc. I went back home after that and ordered Elise's favorite takeout. We talked about her day and then went to bed. Now, a week ago, Leah had invited Elise for brunch on Saturday, proposal day, at a new fancy place, the proposal location. She emphasized that the place was fancy so that Elise wouldn't get suspicious of Leah asking her to wear a nice dress. On Saturday morning, Leah and David came to our apartment to pick up Elise. As soon as they left, I called a friend of mine who was waiting just around the corner, and I left soon after. Then I called my other friend who was supposed to be at the cabin and asked him how everything was going. He assured me that everything was set up exactly how I wanted it. I had also asked David to share their location and to drive slowly or take a longer route so that I can get there 10 to 15 minutes before them. I realized David hadn't shared the location, but it was fine. We got there and I just ran in to change into a suit. Then I went to the exact position and checked the camera angles. Everything was perfect. Then I waited for my girlfriend and her friends to arrive. The drive is 30 to 40 minutes from our apartment, and they should have been there. I thought they were slightly overboard with stalling. I waited there for another 20 minutes. It had already been more than an hour since they left the apartment, and I was getting worried, so I asked one of my friends to call David and sneakily ask how long it'll take them. They called him 2 to 3 times, but no answer. Then they called Leah 2 to 3 times, no answer. I assumed the worst. I called David and Leah as well, still no answer. Finally, I decided to call Elise. First call, she didn't answer. My heart was racing at this point. As soon as I called her again, Leah answered instead. I was panicking and asked her if everything was all right and why nobody was answering the phone. She went silent for 2 seconds and then started yelling at me. She told me to never call Elise again and that I was dead to her, that I was a horrible human being for doing that to her, that she doesn't want to see my face or talk to me ever again. I was confused, but before I could say anything, she hung up. I was so confused and started crying, and my friends had to console me. Soon after that, I got a text from Leah that she'll be coming over later with David to get Elise's stuff, and that Elise doesn't even want to step into the apartment, even if I'm not there. I immediately call her parents to ask what was going on. They knew about the proposal, and we were supposed to go to their home for lunch after the proposal. They had no clue what was going on and told me that they'll call her and ask. I got a call from them 10 minutes later saying that they called Elise and she told them that she can't talk right now and she'll call them later. They were also confused about all this. I was devastated and I didn't know what to do. My friends took me back to my apartment and we hung out. David and Leah came over in the evening to take Elisa's stuff. My friends and I tried to talk to them, but they didn't say anything. They just asked me where Elisa's stuff was and took some of it and said they'll be back for the rest. They also reiterated that if I tried contacting Elisa again, I'll be reported for harassment. At that moment, I just wanted to cry because the thought of me harassing my girlfriend was overwhelming. After they left, my friends told me that they think I shouldn't be alone right now, and they were staying the night and won't take no for an answer. We stayed up and talked till 4 a.m. last night, and then everybody went to bed. I wasn't able to sleep, and I've just been thinking about every potential reason for Elisa's behavior, but I don't have any answers. The only scenario I can think of is that Elise was cheating on me and somehow she realized I was going to propose, and she freaked out and told her friends that she can't do this because I cheated on her. This still doesn't make sense, but it's the closest thing to an explanation I have right now. I know it's a horrible thing to think about. Today was supposed to be the first day of our engaged life together. Hopefully, I'll be able to get some answers from her parents if they talk to her. All right, folks. This one was super unsatisfying. There's no conclusion. And so, I know sometimes you folks get on me because I don't look up, for edits and updates or whatever. Well, this time I did. It takes me a while. I normally am not going to do this. I'm not going to always do this because it's not how it works, okay? But I tried looking, and the only update was basically this person saying they still hadn't really learned anything, and they were still waiting, and that they read some comments. It was nothing. It was useless. We are left without an answer to this, and it's driving me up a wall. So, I don't know. Give me your theories in the comments, what you think happened, because I think this person's speculation that maybe Elise cheated and, tried to project the blame onto him first to avoid feeling bad. Maybe. I don't know. But is this person hiding something? What do we all think? I really want to know your theories because we're not going to get an answer. You can go check if you want. There's nothing. And now I'm going to stew on this for the rest of the day. Great. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.